I think a lot of the worry about being out and about is easily negated when we're all just conscious of one another. 2021 seems to be quite the year for comic shows in Chicago in spite of the ongoing pandemic, but I found that thankfully much of the kind of crowd who would have interest in these exhibits are very reasonable people who can safely navigate public spaces. So that being said, I went to 2 comic galas this year, and the first show I attended took place at the Chicago Cultural Center, presented by Chris Ware. So this video is Chicago, where comics came to life. The Chicago Cultural Center is a massive building in the Loop that is completely free and open to the public. It was established in 1897 as the central library location of the city, but was later converted to house receptions for diplomats and community leaders, as well as feature exhibitions of performance, visual, and literary arts. It's also a very pretty walk to the Cultural Center, so this show was just wins all around. As I said, the show is curated by the prolific Chris Ware, who, if you don't know, is basically a modern must-read author of graphic novels. His works include the Acme Novelty Library, the Monograph, and his latest work is Rusty Brown. So whether you love him or you haven't heard of him, his work is exhaustive in detail, and he is always very cognizant of the history of cartooning with every brushstroke that he completes for his work. And so, to me, the idea of reading Ware's observations of our city's sequential history is already very, very enticing, let alone actually seeing these things in a public space. Anyway, when you get to the gallery, it's surprisingly big, and it's honestly a little overwhelming just how many artifacts are on display among all the commentary and the history cards. It's almost tough to choose a direction to head first, just because the space is so full and vibrant and attention-grabbing. So my suggestion is to enter and then head left first thing, towards the appropriately black and white walls of the exhibit, because this is where comics started, right? This is purely for chronological sense to see where comics in Chicago started off as just one-off satirical or political panels, and then you're going to follow them into becoming newspaper funnies and comic strips, and then eventually head into seeing them become single-issue comics. That's as far as this exhibit is going to take us. You'll have to go to the sequel gallery that's over at the Museum of Contemporary Art to see where comics become graphic novels in Chicago. But don't worry, I will actually have a video dedicated to that show, just in case you guys missed that experience. The other thing that this show does a great job of is sharing history of the city that is not often known by many, and that's the experiences of different races, different genders, and the difficulty that they endured when, say, trying to start a newspaper themselves, or even just getting their work entered into regularly syndicated spaces to be able to achieve their own success and gain popularity. You get to see this a little bit in the black and white area of the gallery, but far more prominently as you turn around and head into the red, blue, and yellow areas. You're literally following comics as they begin to be printed in color as strips or have their own, dedicated funny books. And, of course, as you follow that, you also get to see Jackie Orms, Dale Messick, Daniel Day, Virginia Huguet, Jay Jackson. The variety of these different stories and art styles and subject matter, that's what's so engaging, because from here you can vault into so many different directions in the gallery space and you're never bored. As you're learning about all of these different people and some of the amazing things and history-changing things that they have created, you also get to see all of these relics on display, some stuff in pretty immaculate condition. So it's a treat to Chicago syndication history, but even better than that is you're getting to see the original artwork. Being able to see illustrative techniques, including tricks that are still used by traditional creators to this day, that's a huge inspiration for comic creators. So what was really cool when I went was that it was actually quite a bit of a hangout spot for a lot of the students from SAIC and the International School of Comics, which were both relatively close by the Cultural Center. So that being said, I guess keep an eye out for some young blood. They seemed like they were learning a lot. Speaking to the history a little more, what's a pleasant surprise is not only seeing original copies of those comics and the collected hardbound editions, but getting to see the other tools of the process. There were a lot of boxes that had some of these classic creators like tools and instruments, like old nibs for inking. There were also some things on display like these gorgeous silver plates for printing. And of course, the whole way, Ware's knowledge of the endless facets of comic creation are on full display here throughout this gallery. So much of your time is indeed well spent just standing and reading, and then absorbing what you're in the same room with for a few minutes. It's easy to just spend a full day at this gallery looking at this commentary and then looking at what's in front of you and just grasping the weight of it. And of course, this gallery isn't just about the history of the creation of these comics either. It's also about the impact that they had on Chicago, the change that they enacted, the impact that they had on the world and on everyday people. So yes, you do get to see like a lot of antiques and such, but it's not just paperworks. There's all kinds of toys, metal lunchboxes and coffee tins, yo-yos, like crazy merchandise for comics that a lot of people today may have not even heard of, or if you mention it to them, it's like recalling an old friend that they haven't seen in decades. But at the time, these were titles and brands that had a firm cultural grasp. So the positive is thinking, again, even of just those students that were visiting the day that I went, maybe they only have experience with the big two. Maybe they read some manga, but now they're discovering these classics, which at this time are often available via like Fantagraphics or Drawn and Quarterly or any number of other indie publishing lines who bring that stuff back. The other thing that really sells that idea is the idea of checking out the classics, I should say, is the design of the exhibit itself. Everything in this gallery is bold and it's big and it's colorful, but it's not oversaturated and it's not too crazy. It's a little overwhelming, yes, because there's so much stuff to look at, but it's not crammed in a way that you might run into at some larger museums where it makes it almost impossible to get to see some of the things that you're looking at. Each area has, at minimum, a sprinkle of everything, of the history cards, the merchandise that the comics often inspired, the comics themselves, the artwork, all kinds of stuff. And then there are other spaces where they have really large cases that are basically all merchandise so that you can see how influential a lot of the titles were. There's a separate area in the gallery that has smaller displays, and again, it's all about the tools of the trade, the printed material. And so everything is spread out in such a way that, as overwhelming as it seems, you do get through the space in a really enjoyable manner. Another thing I have to mention here too is the variety of stories in comics, no matter where they come from, is often what draws readership the most. There's a visual style of storytelling for people who love all kinds of genres and all kinds of styles of art. So the same is true here. In Chicago, in our history, there's some people who would be just interested in what would seem like more trivial things, but like the modern working woman of the time. Some people might just want like mysteries and hard-boiled detective stuff. Some people want the future and space adventures. And I think what these different classics showcase here really well is that you could have styles that are not quite conventional to the type of story you're trying to tell, but the work still speaks volumes and captures the imagination. These are a lot of titles that inspired a lot of big hitters today, but a really important thing is that this also further inspired things like zine culture, which is on its own an incredibly important part of Chicago's sequential history. Again, more on that subject when we get to the next video, which will talk about the Museum of Contemporary Art Gala. But hopefully you kind of get where I'm going with this. I don't want to ramble on too long. Essentially, this show is only here until early January. So if you're in the Chicago area, I highly recommend paying a visit to the Cultural Center. Again, this is a free public space, and it's a space that works to support the arts in so many ways. It's becoming a little bit less rare that comics are now recognized and included in these spaces as well. When I went, it was a beautiful experience, truly thoughtful in its layout, in the items included for the displays, the design of the walls, the direction of your journey through the space. I cannot recommend it enough. Thank you to everyone who has checked out my channel and looked forward to my new videos. I really appreciate every comment, subscription, and view, and I hope to bring you some really varied and hopefully inspiring material in the coming year. Simply speaking, comics have been with me all my life from when I was learning how to read, and I'm sure until the day I die. So again, please do check out the Cultural Center to support the arts and go and see this fantastic show, and I will see you guys in the next video for more sequential goodies. Take care and enjoy those comics.